All right. Well, we are live, folks. Good morning and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, February 14th. Let me be the first to say Happy Valentine's Day. And I will also be the first to tell you go over to the district page and you'll see a really cool graphic that you could use on your Rotary Club pages that says, Love a Rotarian today. We make a difference. So we do make a difference and we are glad you're with us. My name is Donald Hovis, your CWRAP host, and I'm from Chicora Rotary here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Would like to give a special shout out to Mary Gask from the 5 Points Rotary Club, who sets up all of our speakers, and she set up, of course, our speaker today, Mark Nisbet. Mark is from Eudora Farms, which is the first drive-through safari park in South Carolina. His history with caretaking for animals started during his childhood. Mark was responsible for the caretaking of the rabbits and chicken that lived on the balcony of his family's apartment in Morganton, North Carolina. I'd love to hear more about rabbits and chickens living on a balcony of an apartment. As the children of a teacher, value was heavily placed on education and conservation. Eudora Farms was built with the mindset of providing a drive-through safari experience that would address the education, preservation, conservation, and the protection of the environment for the entire community. And joining us today from around the Aiken, South Carolina area, Mark Nisbet. Mark, glad to be with us, sir.
Yes, and thank you for having me. And certainly, it's an honor to be on your program this morning. Again, my name is Mark, and I thought what I would try to do first is just elaborate a little on that bio that you just gave, and share with you how we gotten to this point here at Eudora Farms. And then be glad to open it up for any questions and go from there. So again, my name is Mark, and yes, I did grow up all the way through high school until I left for college in an apartment. And my mom was a single parent. I had a sister and myself, and always had the love for animals, but of course, when you're in an apartment, particularly on the third floor, it's sort of hard to have cats and dogs and different things. So my mom certainly saw that interest and passion that I had with animals growing up. Some of you maybe remember Mutual of Omaha and Jacques Cousteau and some of his unique programs. So I was able to have some different animals, from guinea pigs to rabbits to actual chickens on our balcony. And I really had a special mom that really went out of her way to try to make sure that I could do the things that I enjoyed. So I was certainly blessed with that. So I graduated Elon College at the time, and went to work for LabCorp right out of college, but always had interest in animals. So once I got to South Carolina, I was showing dogs, and then my wife also was showing. So we moved out here to Eastern Aiken County, which is a real rural area, and actually still is. So during that time, we were showing dogs and kind of started getting some interest in ostriches and emus. And some of you maybe remember back in the day, back in the early 90s, when that market was a really big thing, but they were so expensive. Ended up getting some hedgehogs, and in there were periodicals where there were other animals available, from miniature donkeys and things, different animals like that. So we eventually got a couple miniature donkeys, had a little area cleared, probably about 5 acres, and felt like, they'll never eat all this grass. And so we got those, and then we ended up getting a camel. Just we thought would be kind of a neat thing. And then that kind of really began our journey with animals from all over the world. Our church, had asked us multiple times then to see if we could bring some out to vacation Bible schools and different things like that. And so that's what we did. And then someone had a festival, or they were teaching school wanted us to bring some to do some educational shows as well as festivals. And so we would find time to be able to do some of those things and on the weekends. And so that our little hobby business kind of got a little bit bigger. And then in the early 2000s, we started with our draft horses doing field trips with schools. And so these were educational trips. We had about 30 acres at the time, and would take different school groups throughout our farm and tell them a little bit about the different animals that we had, a little about the conservation and interaction. And this really gave kids and adults a chance to see a lot of these animals up close. Well, then in 2008, the economy sort of dropped in the housing market. So things really changed with school groups being able to come out. So we started doing more and more things off site. And during that period, LabCorp went through multiple mergers and acquisitions. And one of the latter ones, I ended up being on the short end and was no longer with LabCorp after about 20 years. So we started doing more and more things off site. And as we did that, that business really started taking off soon after 2008, where we were doing a lot of large school groups. We were doing fairs across the country, from the New York State Fair to the Georgia National Fair in Perry. And this really gave us a great opportunity to share a lot of animals with a lot of people. Well, during that time, we had stopped and had purchased a few animals from some drive-through parks. And I know when I saw those for the first time, I said, this would just be amazing if we ever could do something like that to that kind of level. But really, we only had 30 acres then, and it really just would never be able to sustain something like that with that small piece of property. So, really that became a dream that we hope to one day do. And so over the years, as some of the property next to us came available, some of it had been logged and stuff. And so then the owners started selling a little bit. And I would purchase 10 or 15 acres at a time. And really it was just kind of paying as you go. So we would add that, and then added a few more acres, and really with the idea that maybe one day we would have a drive-through. But at the same time, the events that we were doing off site were doing great. And of course, we are way out in a very rural area. So the concern was, people probably never come out here. It's just so far. Social media really wasn't that big in the middle, around 2008, 2010. So it was really just the journey. And just so when we would be home, we would, my kids and I, we would be working on different exhibits and fencing. And we eventually got the fencing up where we were going to maybe one day do the drive-through. But for a year or two, we just cut hay there. And still thinking maybe one of these days we'll do it, but kind of in the back of your mind, when things are doing well with your job, and maybe you have a dream or a passion of something that you would like to do that's totally outside of maybe what you're currently doing. It's really a leap of faith, to take that situation, to leave where your comfort zone is. So, I just said, well, it's probably not ever going to happen, but we'll just keep working on it. Well, the good Lord certainly knows when to open doors and close doors. And I certainly believe He does know when the time is right. Well, as we went into 2019, we had finished our giraffe exhibit and finished building that. And so we started our fairs this time in 2020. And so the first few fairs we we're in Florida. And then by the middle of March, we were starting to hear a little bit about this coronavirus and some stuff about Wuhan, China, and the whole thing. But we really were thinking, well, that's not really going to happen, and so we'll be fine. Well, we were at a fair there in near Fort Myers, Florida, and we were all set up and everything. Everything was pretty much set to go, and the fair board on day of opening wasn't allowed to open. The CDC had come in and canceled the fair. So I said, well, that's fine. We loaded up, went back home. I said, just give us more time at home to get stuff, maybe projects we had ready for a later time. So March kind of went through March, and then the word was, well, the coronavirus or COVID would eventually during the summer would probably open things back up because of the heat and everything. So we'll be fine. We'll get through these next couple months, take care of some stuff. But as we progressed further into March and then at the 1st of April, a lot of our events started getting canceled. In fact, they started canceling all the way into the fall. So our direction now kind of started changing. And, I had made contact with several other folks that had some drive-through parks across the country, and they were really having a lot of success at that time. So we kind of set forth, well, we need to try to do something to pay bills. We had a staff that went on the road with us, and they had families. So we're trying to figure out, well, what can we do? Because we certainly got to try to keep them afloat as well. So we set out and said, well, I think we could get enough stuff done, maybe by Mother's Day weekend, and we could try to open with what we had. So we'll just kind of, if we could at least pay some bills would be great and sustain until the pandemic goes away. So that week before Mother's Day, I went out on a lawnmower. We went out and just made a path through the pasture and felt like, well, maybe they can at least see where this is, and maybe after a month or so they'll have a little path. So on Mother's Day weekend we opened, and most of our infrastructure was just temporary that we had, because of course we had a lot of tents and stuff, so we set those up, and we just moved some animals around, and we'll just give it a shot. And so we began that weekend, and I think the first day or two, we probably had 20 or so cars that came through, and that was really exciting, because we said, well, at least looks like we might generate enough where we could pay our staff, every day, and keep up on our bills. So through Mother's Day weekend, then a lot of the social media kind of happened, where people started posting videos of the interaction that their families were having, and being able to get up close, just the laughter and the experiences people were having kind of went viral. And so then that next week, we started getting people that started coming from a good little ways. And probably by about the third week into May, near the end of May, we were up to the point of having 2 to 3 hour waits for people to get in. And really what was happening was, it was sort of the perfect storm, because people were looking for things to do that they could do with their family where they were staying, but not be affected by the outside world. So what a better thing to do in your car, but then also to be able to enjoy and interact with animals as you go through the park. So that began our process there. And all through that whole summer, we were having 2-3 hour wait just to get into the gate. And we started adding more and more animals that we had, because we only had maybe at the time about 100. And most all these were born here on our farm from zebras and camels. So we started bringing in a few more animals, and this certainly allowed people for more of an educational experience, from being able to get up close to wildebeest, to giraffes, and other animals. So we did that, and now since we've already gotten through the pandemic, our real goal is just it's been to try to sustain a drive-through park in this area, and we have been fortunate to be able to do that. And some of the success that we had during the pandemic, really allowed us to establish a much more foundation, from having a walk-through safari and other things where people are able to interact, to educational programs that we're starting to do now. And now we're starting to do more and more field trips with school groups where they get an opportunity to come in. We're getting ready to do a thing with the South Carolina Baptist Convention, where their staff's going to be coming out for an educational program, and then also to be able to give their staff an opportunity to see and learn about some of the new things that are happening with animals. And then we also are getting ready to do something with Clemson Extension, with the extension agents, where they'll come in one day here in April for an educational program, pretty much on alternative livestock and other opportunities of what's happening in the marketplace as far as animals outside of just your traditional cows and goats, sheep, and hogs, and so forth. So that's kind of where we are right now. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that anybody has at this time, if you'd like.
Mark, I'll jump in and first and say it's really, really cool. Love your story. I actually happen to be on your website right now. And guys, if you're curious of what it is, it's eudorafarms.net. I want to know, how did you come up with the name Eudora?
Well, that's a good question. That it's nothing really too exciting. When I worked at the time, it was Roche Biomedical Labs. I was in Mississippi, and my sales territory was northern Mississippi and Memphis area. So the little town that I lived in was Eudora, South Carolina. And when we were getting ready to have a litter of puppies, and one of the things what you want to do when you're showing particularly is kind of like at this time you more think of it as a brand, but you want to have a kennel name so that people they know where those dogs came from, and then they're somewhat familiar with the genetics and so forth. So we named our kennel at that time Eudora Akitas at the time, and so we just kind of stuck with that. And so nothing real exciting, but that's how it came.
This is also something very unique, Mark. As I was while you were talking, I was looking at some things on your website, and we do have a question I'm going to ask you here in a second that was posted in the chat, or two. But guys, if you're out there and you're in the area and you want one of his animals to come to your party, he does that. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we do that some. Like we do a lot of nativities during December, where with churches, where we bring the animals of the nativity to places like that. And we certainly do birthday parties and other events that we're able to bring certain animals, as well to that. And one thing I did want to mention too, just when the pandemic was going on, the part of the county that we're at is the Wagner area. Some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with that. It's a very rural part of Aiken County. So there's only like an Inmark right outside of where we live, which is in Perry, South Carolina, and there's a Dollar General store. Well, the neat thing is the people that we have working for us and still working for us are people from our local community. So it's really been a big success with that, and just how the impact of things. A couple times the Inmark and the Dollar General, particularly during the pandemic, when there were so many people coming in, both of those stores multiple times had to close just because their stores got overwhelmed and they couldn't handle the volume and stuff. So that was a good thing. So it really helped the economics in our part of the county. And it has brought people, the people who come are probably within a 60 to 120 mile radius. It's where most of them come from. The Charleston market, we do get people from Myrtle Beach, Florence, the upstate, of course, a good little bit from Augusta, Georgia in that market. So for a little family farm, it's really been able to spread and enlighten a lot of things in this part of our county and part of South Carolina.
Excellent. This question has been asked twice now in the chat. Where do you get your animals from?
Now, and that's a good question. We get that asked a lot. Most of the ones we have been born here at our farm. The several that we haven't, they've come from other breeders, from farms, wildlife parks, or zoos in the United States. A lot of people, think that a lot of the animals are imported but they're not. They're all bred here in the United States. Like our giraffes, they're probably 8 to 10 generation American born. Same with the camels, the same with, pretty much all of them.
What would you say is the most unusual animal on your safari?
The most unusual, we have wildebeest. They're pretty unique to get a chance to see a lot of these beautiful animals up close. Obviously you're going on an actual African safari is tremendous, but here you're able to, for a couple hours, just come to this part of the county in your car for, we charge now it's $36 a car for up to 6 people. And they're able to get up, right up to their car, wildebeest, eland, Asian water buffalo, African watusis. And it's something to see, on television, but it's really breathtaking, to have a camel or an ostrich sticking his head right in your window. But to really see the beauty of those animals and the magnitude and it is amazing what people experience and being able to do that with their family. And the unique thing, like compared, like we're obviously not trying to even compare with like a zoo, particularly like a riverbank zoo or something like that. There's no comparison, which that's one of the finer zoos in America. When you go through a zoo, I went not here back about 6 months ago to Riverbanks, and when you go through a zoo, it's usually kind of like a museum feeling almost, where you're going through, you're looking, you're enjoying it. When you come through a drive-through park, right as they're coming in, they can kind of feel the journey of it being kind of a wild situation, and when they enter, it's sort of like game on, the adrenaline starts flowing because the ostriches are right there. And as you watch cars go by and you can, be at the kangaroo exhibit and you can look over and see the vehicles going through and the landscape. And the neatest thing you're going to see or hear is the laughter and the hollering and the screaming. And it's really memories that people with being able to do with their family, they're going to remember for a lifetime. So when those kids, go off to college, come home, they're going to tell, hey, Mom, Dad, remember that time that camel stuck his head in and grabbed Dad's drink or whatever? It's just things they're going to remember forever. So it's a totally 2 different types of experiences. So you could do both in one day and have just an unbelievable day.
Awesome. Mark, we got several questions posted in the chat. I'm going to try to rapid fire those to you here. So we'll cut off questions, but obviously if you want Mark's information, I'm sure he'll be happy to give that out at the end. One question was posted in the chat that you just answered, so I'm going to reiterate. Your admission is $36 per car for up to 6 people.
Right. Right.
All right. Here we go. Rapid fire with Mark from Eudora Farms. Here we go. Some of them are the same kind of question.
Okay.
How do you advertise?
Our biggest is social media, and just word of mouth's been our biggest means of advertising.
Is your farm regulated by like Clemson or another U.S. agency?
It's federally regulated by USDA.
Excellent. Do native animals like coyotes or anything alike pose a problem to your animals?
No, we haven't had any issues with coyotes or any native animals.
Do your animals compete or eat with each other? Like, would somebody?
The neat thing too, again, about a drive-through park, our park is about 160 acres, so they're out in a big, very big area. The neat thing, like if in enclosures, animals really depend on humans for everything, for all their food and everything. And in this kind of environment, they still depend on us for their food and water, but they're able to do enrichment themselves and figuring out, where the feed is. They're able to, with other animals, they have to make determine, when you got a wildebeest and a Watusi or a llama and an alpaca, they're all intermingling and learning to cohabitat with each other. So they get a tremendous amount of enrichment with each other and where to go, how to get away, what to do, and things like that.
Excellent. How big is your staff?
Now it varies. It is seasonal. This time of year right now is definitely our off season. During the winter, kids are all in school. Parents are working, and the weekends start picking up. A lot depends on the weather. So 6 to 7 during the off season. During the summer when we're real busy, often we'll have 10 or 11 people. A lot of them are high school kids or college kids that are home for the summers as well.
Excellent. I will call your attention if you're looking for more information on Eudora Farms. The website link is in the chat. So if you're looking for their website or how to find out more about this wonderful place, I would encourage you to visit their website. I have 2 more questions for you before we go on to some announcements after your presentation. So let's see here. Do you have an elephant?
No elephants.
And last but not least, I wanted to save this for last because this possibly could create a really good story, but it doesn't sound like maybe it's ever happened. But has any of your animals ever escaped?
No, they haven't. We have had a few that have gotten out, particularly we have cattle guards at the different entrance gates, and that's a learning process for animals. It keeps where you can keep the gates open and you can drive right in. And so we've had some all dads a few times that were new there, that weren't accustomed to it, that just jumped right over. And these are like super goats from Africa. But the nice thing, we've always been able to get everything back in.
Awesome. Well, Mark, greatly appreciate you presenting today. A very neat topic. If I'm ever in the Aiken area, I am sure going to check out Eudora Farms.
Hey, Donald, please share with Mark Nancy's comment in case he doesn't see the chat.
Yes. So there's 2 comments here. It was great seeing you again, Mr. Nisbet. Thanks for sharing. Mr. Nisbet brought one of his camels to the USC Sumter campus, and it was a fantastic experience.
Oh, yeah. That's my daughter played softball there.
And Nancy says, I had the opportunity to babysit one of the animals in my office at USC Sumter. Hello, Mark. Hope Shelby is doing well.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.